Keanu Reeves was ready to leave, until Sandra Bullock said one word. The night was quiet, and the air carried a weight Keanu could feel pressing against his chest. He had spent the day trying to hold himself together, but the loneliness inside him had grown louder than the applause of any crowd he had faced. He sat alone in the corner of a dimly lit hotel room, his suitcase packed neatly by the door. The decision to leave everything behind had been building inside him for weeks, and now with his ticket folded in his jacket pocket, it felt final. As he looked at the empty glass on the table beside him, memories of old laughter returned, voices from years ago, moments of warmth that had faded into silence. Keanu had always lived with a quiet humility, never chasing fame for its noise, but sometimes the weight of being misunderstood felt too heavy. He thought of walking away from the cameras, the expectations, and the endless cycle of being watched but never truly seen. Just as the silence grew unbearable, his phone vibrated. He almost ignored it, but something inside urged him to look. The name on the screen stopped him. Sandra. For a long moment he stared, unsure if he even had the strength to hear her voice. Yet with a quiet sigh he pressed the call. Keanu. Her voice was soft, carrying both strength and a trace of worry. I heard, is it true? Are you leaving? He hesitated, staring at the suitcase. Maybe it's time. I don't think I have anything left to give. There was silence on the other end, a silence heavy with meaning. He knew Sandra well enough to know she was choosing her words carefully. She had always been that way. Thoughtful, steady, able to see beyond the surface. Finally her voice returned, quieter now, almost a whisper. Stay. Just one word. It cut through the noise in his head like light breaking through a storm. Stay. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes as that single word echoed. She didn't try to convince him with promises of success or empty reassurances. She simply asked him to stay, because she knew better than anyone that sometimes a person doesn't need answers. They just need a reason not to walk away. His chest tightened as old memories of her flooded in. Their laughter on film sets, their quiet talks after the cameras stopped rolling, the way she always reminded him of the humanity hidden beneath the fame. He remembered the way she once told him that kindness lasts longer than applause. Maybe she was right. Maybe what he was about to leave behind was not the burden, but the chance to still give meaning to someone somewhere. The next morning he stood by the window, watching the sunrise paint the sky. His suitcase was still by the door, but something inside had shifted. He wasn't ready to move it. He wasn't ready to walk away, not yet, because one word had reached him when nothing else could. And in that fragile moment, Keanu Reeves realized that sometimes the most powerful choice is not leaving, but staying, because someone believes you still matter. The morning light stretched across the room, soft and golden, but Keanu's thoughts were heavy. The word stay echoed in his mind over and over like a quiet bell he couldn't ignore. He walked to the window, pressing his hand against the glass, and watched the world outside wake up. People moved with purpose, unaware of the storm inside him. His suitcase remained by the door, a reminder of the choice he hadn't made yet. His phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a call, but a message from Sandra. Can we meet? Just for coffee. No cameras. No pressure. Keanu hesitated. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to retreat into silence. But the other part, the one that heard her voice the night before, knew he needed to see her. 2 hours later, he found himself in a small cafe tucked away in a quiet street. It was the kind of place where nobody cared about names, only about warmth in a cup and peace at a corner table. Sandra was already there, her hair tied back, dressed simply, almost like she wanted to blend into the background, but her eyes, steady and calm, were impossible to miss. You came, she said softly, with a smile that carried both relief and understanding. I almost didn't, Keanu admitted, sliding into the chair across from her. But I guess I needed to hear why. She studied him for a moment, her gaze full of kindness but also something stronger. Truth. Because you matter, she said. And not for the movies or the headlines or the pictures. You matter because your presence changes the way people feel about life. You make others believe that pain doesn't have to be the end. And if you walk away now, Keanu, those who need you will lose more than you realize. Her words struck him deeply. He wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, that he was tired, that he was just a man who had lost too much. But when he looked into her eyes, he saw the sincerity there. She wasn't trying to save his career, she was trying to save him. He lowered his eyes, his voice barely above a whisper. Sandra, I don't know if I can keep carrying it all. I don't know if I have enough strength left. She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "Then don't carry it alone," she said. "Let people stand with you. Let me stand with you." Her touch was grounding, steady. In that moment, Keanu felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Connection. For years, he had tried to fight his battles quietly, to shield the world from his scars, but here she was, telling him he didn't need to. A sudden wave of emotion rose in him, and he pulled his hand away to hide the tears forming in his eyes. But Sandra only smiled gently, as if she already knew. The cafe grew louder with the hum of conversation. But for them, time seemed to stand still. Keanu realized he wasn't ready to answer her. Not yet. But he also realized he wasn't ready to leave her side either. Later, as he walked back to his hotel, the suitcase by the door no longer felt like a decision waiting to be made. It felt like a test. And for the first time, Keanu wondered if staying might be braver than leaving. But deep inside, he knew one thing with certainty. This was only the beginning. The city looked different that evening. The same streets, the same lights, but to Keanu it all carried a new weight. Every face he passed seemed to mirror something he had been hiding inside himself. Exhaustion, longing, hope, mixed with fear. He walked slowly, almost as if his feet were unsure of where to go, until he found himself at the edge of a park. The park was quiet, only a few people scattered across benches. He sat down, staring at the fading sky, thinking about what Sandra had said. Her words kept circling in his mind. "You matter not for the movies, but for the lives you touch." He wanted to believe her, but a voice inside whispered that maybe she was only being kind. Maybe she was giving him a reason, because she knew he was breaking. Just then, a young boy and his mother walked by. The boy froze when he saw Keanu, tugging at his mother's sleeve. "Mom, it's him," he whispered. The mother smiled apologetically, as if not wanting to disturb, but the boy ran forward anyway. "Mr. Reeves, you're my hero," the boy said shyly, clutching a worn comic book in his hands. "When my dad left, I used to watch your movies every night. You made me feel like I wasn't alone." Keanu's chest tightened. He looked down at the boy, seeing sincerity shining in his eyes. Slowly, he took the comic book from the boy's hands and signed it with the pen he always carried. "Thank you," Keanu said softly. "You're stronger than you know." As the boy walked away, smiling proudly, Keanu felt something stir in him. Something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long time. Purpose. Later that night, he called Sandra. "You were right," he said quietly. "About what?" she asked, her voice warm but cautious. "People notice. Even when you think they don't, they do. Today, a kid reminded me that maybe I've been measuring my life the wrong way. I thought it was about carrying the weight alone. But maybe it's about sharing it, letting it mean something to someone else." Sandra didn't reply right away. Instead, he heard her breathing, steady, as if she was giving him space to speak his truth. "Keanu," she finally said. "That's exactly why I told you to stay." A silence fell between them, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with a quiet understanding. Still, doubt lingered inside him. Staying meant facing more questions, more eyes, more days where loneliness could slip back in. Leaving meant peace, but peace built on emptiness. That night, lying in bed, Keanu stared at the ceiling. The boy's smile, Sandra's steady voice, the word "stay." These pieces of light kept colliding against the darkness he carried. And though he still wasn't sure of his decision, one thing was clear. He wasn't ready to close the door yet. Not tonight. And for Keanu, that was already a kind of victory. The next morning arrived with an unusual heaviness. Keanu sat at the small table by his window, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of him. He had always found comfort in routine. But lately, even the simplest things felt like questions he couldn't answer. The suitcase was still there, silent and accusing, reminding him that his choice had not been made. His phone rang again, and this time it wasn't Sandra. It was his agent, voice sharp and businesslike. "Keanu, the studio needs you to confirm. Are you walking away or not? People are waiting." Those words cut deep. People were waiting. For years, that phrase had controlled his life, waiting for him to show up, waiting for him to smile, waiting for him to act as though he carried no scars. He wanted to scream, to say he was tired of being expected to perform while inside he was drowning. But the voice of the young boy in the park returned, along with Sandra's whisper of "stay." "I need time," Keanu said finally, his voice steady. "Don't call me again until I say otherwise." He hung up before the protests began. He knew he couldn't sit in silence anymore, so he called Sandra. When she answered, he didn't waste words. "Can we meet tonight? Somewhere quiet." That evening, they met in a small garden hidden behind an old church. Lanterns glowed softly along the path, and the scent of jasmine floated in the air. Keanu arrived first, pacing slowly until Sandra appeared. She wore no makeup, no disguise, just herself, real, unguarded. "You look restless," she said, studying him as they walked together. "I am," he admitted. "I'm standing on a line I can't step over. One side is silence, the other side is noise. I don't know where I belong anymore." Sandra paused, turning to face him. "Keanu, belonging isn't about sides. It's about people. Who do you let in? Who do you trust to carry some of the weight with you?" Her words cut through him like truth often does, quiet but undeniable. For years, he had built walls to keep people from seeing how much he carried. But with Sandra, those walls didn't matter. She saw straight through them. "And if I let people in?" he asked, his voice almost breaking. "Then maybe you'll find out you don't have to leave to be free," she answered softly. They sat on a bench beneath the lanterns, and for the first time in days, Keanu allowed himself to breathe. No cameras, no questions, no demands, just two people sharing silence. And in that silence, something shifted. He realized that leaving wouldn't erase his pain. It would only erase his chance to find healing. Staying wasn't about enduring the world's expectations. It was about allowing himself to still be part of something meaningful. As they left the garden, Sandra gently touched his arm. "You don't have to decide tonight, but don't forget this feeling. The world may see you as a star, but to the people who truly know you, you're just Keanu, and that's enough." Her words stayed with him long after she was gone. He returned to his hotel, walked past the suitcase, and instead of looking at it with dread, he set it aside. For the first time in weeks, he didn't feel ready to leave. He felt ready to wait. And waiting, he realized, was a kind of courage, too. Days passed, but the storm inside Keanu did not disappear. Instead, it shifted. One moment he felt strong, as if Sandra's words and the boy's smile had built a shield around him. The next moment, doubt crept in, whispering that staying would only bring him more pain. Life had taught him how fragile happiness could be, how quickly people could vanish, leaving only silence. One evening, he walked through the city streets with his hood pulled low, blending into the crowd. Neon lights reflected in puddles. Laughter spilled from restaurants, and yet he felt distant, like a ghost moving among the living. He turned down an alley to escape the noise, and that's when he heard it. A harsh voice, sharp and mocking. "Look at you," a stranger sneered, pointing. "Aren't you that actor? Too good for real life, huh?" Keanu froze. The man's words were drunk and bitter, but they struck deeper than they should have. Others joined in, muttering, laughing, their voices filled with a kind of casual cruelty he had known all his life. For a moment he wanted to walk away, to vanish like he had planned. But then he remembered Sandra's voice. You don't have to carry it alone. He didn't fight back with anger. Instead, he looked the man in the eyes and said calmly, "I'm no better than you. I'm just trying to live, same as everyone else." His voice trembled, not with fear, but with truth. The group went silent, their laughter dying quickly. They weren't expecting humility. They were expecting a fight. Keanu walked away, heart pounding but stronger than before. Because for once he hadn't hidden. He had faced cruelty with kindness. Later that night, he called Sandra again. "I almost broke today," he admitted, his voice raw. "But I remembered your words. I remembered that staying isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing to face what hurts instead of running from it." Sandra's voice was steady. "That's resilience, Keanu. Not pretending you're unbreakable, but standing even when it would be easier to fall. And that's why people need you. Because you remind them they can stand too." Her words wrapped around him like warmth. For the first time in weeks, he felt not just the weight of expectation, but the strength of connection. Before ending the call, Sandra said something that stayed with him. "Don't forget, Keanu, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let people see your scars. Because then they'll know they're not alone in theirs." That night, Keanu moved the suitcase from the door to the closet. It was still there, but hidden, no longer dictating his every thought. And though the battle inside him was not over, he knew one truth: he wasn't ready to leave, because something greater was beginning to grow inside him. The weeks that followed felt different. For so long, Keanu had lived with the idea of leaving, of disappearing quietly. But now the thought no longer held the same power. The suitcase was still in the closet, but it no longer called to him. Instead, life began to whisper in new ways. It was Sandra who pushed him gently forward. One afternoon, she asked him to join her at a small charity event. No cameras, no red carpets, she promised. Just people who need to see that kindness still exists. Keanu almost refused, but something inside told him to go. When they arrived, the room was filled with families, children, and volunteers. There were no flashing lights, no reporters, only warmth. Keanu sat quietly at first, unsure if he belonged, until a little girl in a wheelchair rolled toward him, clutching a small sketchbook. "I drew this for you," she said shyly, holding out a picture of a hero standing tall, surrounded by light. Keanu took it in his hands, his throat tightening. "Is this me?" he asked softly. The girl nodded, her smile wide. "You make me feel like I can be strong too." For a moment he couldn't speak. Tears welled in his eyes, and Sandra gently placed a hand on his shoulder. It was in that instant that he understood. His presence, his resilience, his choice to keep going wasn't just for himself. It was for every person who needed to believe they could survive their own storms. Later, as the night drew to an end, Sandra and Keanu stood outside beneath the stars. He turned to her, his voice quiet but certain. "I was ready to leave it all behind, but one word stopped me. You stopped me, and tonight I realized why. I'm not done yet, not with the people who still need me. Not with myself." Sandra smiled, her eyes shining. "Then stay, Keanu. Stay and keep being who you are. Not the star, not the image, just you. Because that's enough." He looked at her, really looked, and felt something lift from his chest. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't running from the weight of his life. He was carrying it with purpose. As they walked away together, Keanu knew he would face more storms, more nights of doubt, but he also knew he wasn't alone anymore. He had found strength in connection, courage in vulnerability, and hope in a single word that had changed everything. He stayed,